Hello, and welcome to Mean Street News. Mean Street News is here to provide accurate news to help citizens affect change in their local government and beyond. Being nice is overrated. It is time to be real. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. The time to step up and step in is now. So please come join me, Katie, over on Mean Street News to discuss Ohio politics and beyond. I hope to see you there. Hello, and welcome back to Mean Street News. I'm Katie. I'm your host. If you are new here, welcome. If you are joining us again, thank you for coming back. I've missed you all. It has been a crazy couple months. Some stuff I can't get into here, so we're just going to get back into the Ohio 4. The 35-year anniversary is coming up of the death of Floyd Epps and Marsha Blakely. Floyd Epps' murder happened in August 8th, and Marsha Blakely's August 8th of 1991. 4 men were convicted of Marsha's murder. Floyd Epps' murder, like I said, is still unsolved. And let's share a picture of Marsha and Floyd so you guys know who we are talking about. On the left side is Marsha Blakely, on the right is Floyd Epps. And how are these two related to each other? You know, that's a good question. Marsha was living in Floyd Epps' apartment the time that she was murdered. And they were both murdered on the same night. And what I'm going to do today is, I have, I think seven previous episodes that you guys can go back to and listen to the interviews. But what I did is I took the police report and I made a timeline. I started a murder map. You guys are going to see the beginning, the first one tonight. And I also made an outline of like the most important, 20 points of each interview that kind of leads us away from the Ohio 4 being the ones that perpetrated this crime. Now, Katie, how did you even get into this crime? And that's a good question. I've never, researched a murder before. Not my thing. I was more into, politicking, local politics, state politics, federal politics. I started the Parents' Bill of Rights Education, which, got passed 2 years ago. I worked on that. And I was researching some corruption here in Lorain County and people going after our former prosecutor, J.D. Tomlinson. And that is when I met Nancy Smith and figured out, she was a part of the Head Start case. And that led me to the Ohio 4 that J.D. Tomlinson decided, right before he left office to try and get them new trials, like literally a month before. He should have done it sooner. He already knew he was cooked. But that's my own personal opinion. Tonight, though, we're going to start at the beginning. And I'm just going to go over these interviews before we move on to where we left off, is the Delphina Geist interview, which you guys will know later what I'm talking about if you're new here. We're going to go back onto that later this week. But before we get into all that, I want to do like a quick, summation of what the Ohio 4 is. And like I said, how did I even get into the Ohio 4? And give me 2 seconds. I'm pulling up a link for you guys. Like I said, I was investigating the former prosecutor, J.D. Tomlinson, being blackmailed and extorted, which I believe extorted, and the election interference that was going on here in the county, due to all of that. Give me 5 seconds. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I'm just going to do the entire screen. It's so much easier. You guys gotta give me a minute. I'm like new to this after not being on here for 2 months. I'm like, But Lorain County was brought up on Joe Rogan in regards to all of the election interference that was going on while JD was running against Tony Sillo, our now prosecutor, but Tony Sillo worked in the criminal division for 30 years previous to him being the current county prosecutor. I'm going to play you guys a video of the Joe Rogan episode. There's 2 clips here. If my volume wants to work.
Out in real time with the incoming president. And I have the notion that this was really something that we wanted to make an example out of, and you can't engage in this type of conduct.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
Played the wrong one. I'm sorry. The parallel to Trump.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
You know, it was very interesting to me that this is playing out in real time with the incoming president. And I have this parallel situation going on in Ohio. This is called a weave. I'm weaving back to Ohio. And I want to tell you the rest of the story about the Ohio 4. So this guy, J.D. Tomlinson, is the prosecuting attorney in Lorain. He's under indictment right now. He's got 2 months left. Like I said, he now knows, according to him, what it's like to be wrongfully accused of a crime. So watch this. You have these 4 guys who, so again, it's Al Cleveland, Lenworth Edwards, John Edwards, Benson Davis. Yeah, you got to light up for this one. So I told you, William Avery Sr. goes in, tries to get the reward money. They tell him, fuck off. Brings his son in the next day. They say to him, no dice. Then he comes back and says, okay, Al Cleveland told me he committed the murder. Brings his son in the next day. Comes time for their trials to begin, and they're going to all be tried separately. And William Avery Jr. gives this account of how this murder happened. And he says that he watches this woman, Marsha Blakely, get beat for 15 to 20 minutes inside of her apartment, and that, you know, the reason this woman gets beat is because Al Cleveland wanted him to work off a debt and beat her up, and he said no. So then these 4 men bust in the door, and this is how the crime occurs. It comes time for the first trial of these 4 men, and William Avery Jr. shows up as the prosecution's star witness, and he says, I want $10,000 to testify. He gave me I want 10,000. And the prosecutors say, we're not giving it to you. And he says, then I'm not testifying. The judge throws him in jail. He's in jail. He is cool as he.
So they throw him in jail. And here's my next clip for you. Like I said, you know, I got into this because of the
They had a problem on their
going
hands.
on with
They couldn't solve
things that were going on with J.D. Tomlinson, you know, the whole Jennifer Battistelli thing, the whole Tony Sillo and Dennis Wells working for the sheriff, going after the, you know, county prosecutor. As soon as the county prosecutor didn't want to, you know, basically go after the sitting commissioners over contract disputes, they felt like he sided with, you know, the enemy. But in regards to, you know, this case, you know, they wanted to bring attention to this. And because of all the heat that, you know, Jay Thompson was getting for free, Nancy Smith of the Head Start case, and, you know, the corrupt contract that I was looking at, and then, you know, the old guard like just kind of came at him, and it was crazy. And at the end of it, because JD was charged with, 3 felonies in municipal court, but he was also charged with crimes in county that people don't really understand. But, he felt like how it felt to be, wrongfully accused of something, wrongfully convicted, and decided the last month that he was in office to try to do something, which we all knew as soon as Tony Silva came in, he was going to overturn this cases, which is exactly what he did. But like Josh Dubin said, that the shit that went on in Lorain County is very much comparable to what happened with Donald Trump and the weaponization and the lawfare that continues to this day. It continues to this day. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm gonna play the clip that goes kind of into that, where again on episode 2228 from November 13th of 2024, Josh Dubin talks about the weaponization of the Lorain County justice system.
The crime, and they have these guys that are drug dealers in the area. So they become easy marks for this. There's a blade sitting in a diagram found right next to Marsha Blakely's body. They never tested it for DNA. They never collected it. They never tested it. It was at a time when DNA is the early 90s. DNA was around. Her roommate, Epps, Raymond Epps, is found a mile or two down the road with his throat slit and run over.
Same thing.
Same thing. No one's been charged. No one's been charged. It's an unsolved case as of this day. Why?
Because they pinned it on these other guys.
Because they pinned it on these guys, and this guy, William Avery Jr., only came in with information about one of the murders. The cases were so clearly connected that the medical examiner pointed it out. These people were killed in the same way. Why there isn't an outrage, a fucking outrage about this case is beyond me. When I got this case, I said, there is no way what you're telling me is true. That this guy has come and wants to clear his conscience and tells you exactly what happened. And the FBI told the prosecutors that he's a liar. And these guys are still, 2 of them are still serving life sentences. And when you have to live stamped as a murderer, even in the free world, Al Cleveland is out and he's suffering. I mean, I had to listen to his wife heaving. She couldn't get a hold of herself because she went down to J.D. Tomlinson's office and said, "You told me you were going to help." And he said, "I can't now. I'm sorry. I've been indicted. The last time I exonerated someone, look what they did to me," because he exonerated someone else and his political opponents attacked him.
That's the case.
Human beings, we sometimes get in our own way because of outside forces, what we think other people are going to say, think. J.D. Tomlinson's been voted out. He's been wrongfully accused of a crime. It's time for him to say, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. All I ask is actually a meeting with him. I want to meet with you between now and December 31st. Let me lay everything out for you as I have in this submission. He's now going to have it in his hands. He wouldn't answer my text messages. I'll give him a break. He was obviously going through some serious personal issues, being under indictment, running for re-election. This is an easy thing. This is just doing the right thing. There is no way that you could look at this evidence. And this is why I think it's a good idea for, rather than give a snapshot of a case and have to rely on some process with these conviction integrity units behind closed doors where they run the reinvestigation. I like the public being able to get invested and look at the evidence themselves. Everyone loves a true crime story. So why not, as part of this, let the public help make the case? And when they write a letter, they'll do it more forcefully, or they call him and say, how could you ignore this? So,
and for the last 2 years, that is exactly what I have been doing over here on Main Street News, is drawing attention to this travesty. JD waited until he already lost the election a month before he went out. decided to, ask for a new trial, submit for a new trial. Well, their attorneys did, but he approved their submission for a petition for a new trial. There was no way right before Christmas the judges were going to be like, okay, let's hear this new trial and let him go. I mean, JD knew he was cooked when all those videos came out with him and his ex-girlfriend, fighting in their office, and he knew he was cooked. And that's where I get really kind of irritated at our former prosecutors that you went out of your way to exonerate Nancy Smith and Joseph Allen, but that's the only case that you did, knowing that there was other cases, knowing that there was even this case. If you wanted to do it for Nancy, why not the Ohio 4? Oh, until you needed some good publicity, and then, I'm going to do it now. I mean, that's where I get really irritated with him. I get why he did it maybe last minute, maybe understood, how it felt to be wrongfully convicted of 3 felony charges in Muni. He was also getting rotted in Lorain County common pleas, but there was a gag order, so the sheriff couldn't talk about it, so they charged him in Muni so they could slander him in the paper, which is complete election interference when you're looking at charges for elected officials that are up for re-election right around re-election time, and a week before early voting you indict them. I mean, that come on. That's why we compare it with the whole Trump lawfare thing, and all those people are going, Trump. I'm just comparing 2 situations. So you have 4, though. It got my interest. I started reading the case. Josh Dubin put the case file up on online, and it got my interest. And Josh brings up the witness. He brings up how Avery Jr. recanted. But when I went back into the police report, I noticed that, it was pretty easy to track where Marsha was that night. And the last person that Marsha was with was her longtime boyfriend, baby father of one of her children. I think we have one or 2. Anyways, father of her children, Willie Mincy, was last with her at 2 a.m. And the story that this Avery Jr. told, this one witness, we're not going to get too into him today. We're going to wait for that a little bit later. I haven't released his interview tapes yet. Couldn't account for anything about Epps, couldn't account for like really what happened to her. His story changed multiple times, but he wasn't the last person with her. And he said all this happened at 11 p.m. on 8/7/91, which is the night of, you know what I mean? But the last person that was with her was her baby dad boyfriend, Willie Mincy, at 2 a.m. And multiple people saw Willie Mincy and her together throughout, a 3 hour time range. Her time of death was sometime after 3 a.m. So, like, come on, the math ain't mathin', you know what I mean? So what I did is I went and got the interview tapes, and those are the episodes that you can go back and listen to. It's kind of like what we're going to go over today a little bit. We're not going to really listen to too many of them because I'm not going to do it to you, but we're gonna put the timeline out and just kind of a summation of everything that we figured out in our investigation. Now, I have talked to Josh Dubin. I sent him the interview tapes. I sent him kind of summary of those interviews, why I think, he needed to listen to those interviews. He did end up calling me. Me and him talked on the phone a couple of times. I ended up hanging up on him because, he kind of came at me like, well, why do you think the boyfriend did it? Well, because he was last with you. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, why don't you, as his attorney, listen to the effing tapes? I sent you the interviews. I said, why don't you listen to the interviews and then call me back? I don't want to influence your decision. He's like, well, if I listen to him, I'll put you on Joe Rogan. And I responded to him with, I don't give enough about Joe Rogan, because I don't give enough about Joe Rogan. What I do care about is not only the 2 men that are on parole right now that are free. I care about the 2 that are still incarcerated. I care about the fact that, the police had an issue with these boys and decided to target 4 young Black men that were selling crack cocaine in 91 and frame them for murder. I mean, they were guilty of selling drugs. They were not guilty of killing Marsha Blakely or Floyd Epps. And the way that the investigation was handled is what I'm worried about, because, I mean, if this just happened to them, how many other times has this happened? And not even needing to go into the statistics of Lorain County. I mean, it's like horrible. But let's start where I wanted to start was where, where they were found. Let's go back. What I did is I went back to the beginning. We started the investigation from the beginning. Okay. And I'm going to pull up a figure. So, like Josh Dubin said in this episode, Marsha Blakely and Floyd Epps's murder was very much somehow related. You know what I mean? There was a connection there. And sorry, hold on. Okay, so what I did is I pulled up the area. I pulled up a map, and you guys can see a map. Now, point A is Willie Mincy, the boyfriend's house. B is Marsha Blakely's house. C is where Marsha Blakely was found, and D is where Floyd Epps was found. Now, very important, Floyd Epps was found the morning of the early morning of 8/8 of 91. Morning, night, you know what I mean? 1 a.m. by someone called in and saw body. This is far from where he actually hung out. It's pretty out of the way. And I do want to say, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Marsha Blakely's blood ultimately was found at that crime scene and was revealed in Al Cleveland's trial in 2013. So Marsha was there, you know what I mean? 1 a.m. 1 a.m. At some point she was at Section D. Now, before we get into, the whole timeline, I don't want to jump back and forth. I don't want to confuse you guys, but we kind of have to. I want you guys to see the area before we get into what happened that night. Okay. So A is Willie Mincy, and that was the baby dead boyfriend, last person that she was with at 2 a.m. B is Marsha's house. C is where she was found behind the shopping center of the projects. And this whole area is like projects. Okay. And D is where Floyd Epps is found. Now, I'm going to play you guys a quick video. It's about 8 minutes, and it's me driving this area so you guys can get a feel of like how close this all was to each other. People could run, people could, you know what I mean? I can't really get into something unless I know like kind of where it's at. It's hard to, make some points without seeing it. So I'm going to share my screen.
Mincy lived with his family. All right, there's just whole avenue right in front of him. Now they were seen arguing on the corner right there, right? He said he took her, they were arguing on the corner, whatever. He took her purse, ran back to his house, right? Took her purse from the corner, ran back to his house, went grab shoes stuff. Marsha Blakely started to walk home, okay? Now he said that he saw, I'll show you where he said he saw it. So we're on West 23rd Street. All right, it's Paul Avenue out because there used to be a school right here. Okay, right here in this empty lot, there used to be a school. Okay, that's Charleston that they talk about, or Charles or whatever. So now we're gonna head down to Marsha Blakely's, right? And I'm driving. They walk, and she walked and walked and walked in. Come back up on Marshall. All right, Marshall. And they said where the cops tried to say that's where that car pulled down, but Willie Mincy said during the interview that the fake white I said fake because it is fucking fake, white station wagon pulled down Reeves Avenue. That's what he first said, Reeves Avenue. And he was walking to Marsha's Street, which is gonna be Sunset, which is right here. So let me go any further. Right there says street sign. All right, so he said white station wagon pull off on the opposite side of the road, or been this side of the road. And he saw this white station wagon pull off and pull down there. That's what he says. That's what he claims. Okay. Now that car that when Mincy talked about, she said was always parked on this street right down here. So we're going to Marsha's house. So Marsha walks home from Willie's, right? About 2 minutes, 2-minute drive, probably, 10-minute walk, whatever. So then we're going to pull down Sunset. Right here. This is where Floyd Epps and Marsha Blakely stayed. Right in this house over here. Okay. I think this house. Pretty sure this house. Right. Might have been one of those. But anyways, right, one of these. What's the address? 23. No, so it would have been one of those. So they live right over here, okay? That night. All right. So from her house to 58, now we're going to take the path. So she went home, whatever. Willie Mincy got on his bike and rode his bike down, which now I know why. You know what I mean? A little bit of distance. Rode down to Marsha's house. So say she left her house, right? Say she left her house, left off running, okay? She could have easily ran down here to 58. That's how close the shopping plaza is. Or even ran down the other side to back to West 23rd, which is right where that car is pulling out. It's 23rd, the street that we were on before we pulled on Sunset. And her body was found right up here behind this shopping plaza. So she could have easily ran from her house away from whoever was chasing her. You know what I mean? Or she was already in the car. I mean, it's multiple possibilities. I do believe she was home though, because she was found with one shoe. Her left shoe was on the side of her. Was on the side of her body. The missing shoe was at her house. Willie Mincy still had her purse. He said left her purse at her house. Okay, whatever. Fuck he said. Shit. The purse that was taken in evidence that Taliano admitted during Shakim's trial is missing. So she was found behind here. There used to be a bar, used to be a outlet for appliances, and she was found right back there. Okay. Right back there. Now we're gonna go to Floyd Epps. Alright. Where Floyd Epps was found. Earlier that night, killed in the same fashion, throat slit. Marsha's found back there. As you saw, it'd be like brush and trees and shit. Not anymore. You see how a car could have pulled over them. I don't really understand how a car could have pulled over them tracks. Maybe back then they could have. I don't really see it happening. There's his son. Then let's go to where Floyd Epps was. Floyd Epps was found. Alright. We're on Wallace. Now he was killed before her. His murder is still unsolved. Don't forget that. Alright. Yeah, that's us as fuck.
Yeah,
Right,
there's
here's
like
Wallace.
in the laundry room. It has all your socks in it.
It's really weird he was on this street.
You're gonna get so much
to
to go back live.
He's like,
He gets too
running
much
from
to go back
somewhere?
live.
Was he running from someone? Is this where they caught him up? Was he on his way to the gas station, taking the back way? So he would have just made a right and gone to that convenience store, and somebody caught him up here. I mean, right here is where Floyd was found, right over here by that house, right over here. Okay, on the left side of the road, so right over here, he was found. But that's how close. In 6 minutes, I drove from Willie Mincy's house to Marsha's to where she was found to Floyd Epps' house. That is how close. I want to just give you all a proximity, but that is how close these bodies were, and I was turning back on Lake Road. That's how close in proximity they were to each other, which is very weird. And you saw his back right off in the cut, you know what I mean? So he could have easily been walking to go to that convenience store right up here. You know what I mean? Instead of walking the main roads, he could have just taken the back way. Back way's a little shorter and going down, 58 and all that. But that's how close. So it is totally possible that she ran from her house to where
Love
she met her
you. Good
demise.
night.
You know what I mean?
I'll call you in a little
But
bit.
I just wanted to give you all. Yeah, look at that Jeep pulling up now.
Love you.
So I wanted to give you guys, a sense. Now, I don't think after, because it's been a while since this is before I listened to all the interviews. Now I'm thinking she was killed somewhere and then she was moved based on this van that keeps coming up. And if you watched our previous episodes, you know what I'm talking about. If not, go back. But you will. You'll totally get it soon. But I like to give people context. So these two people, and I'm going to pull up my murder map. So these two people were found. Oh, come on. Were found within a close proximity to each other. Floyd was found first at 1 a.m. And then Marsha was found the next morning about 8 o'clock. I'll pull up my murder map here for you and the outline. Now, like I said, it's pretty easy to track where Marsha was that night based off of the interviews, okay, that were given. And that's where the murder map kind of comes in. I'm going to show you, this is just one of them that I made because I don't want to confuse you yet. So let's share this. Sorry, I guess I've been new to this now because it's been a minute. I'm going to share. Here we go. Okay. So here we are. So the Ohio 4 up top. John Rosenbaum, the prosecutor, should have taken him off for this one, but because the texts aren't even on here. Let it load. Okay. So we have our victims. Okay. Marsha Blakely, Floyd Epps. Now let's go over, and like I said, I don't want to really bring up too much in this today because I don't want to confuse you guys, but let's bring up the initial characters, okay, that we found in our investigation. No one's talked about, and we even did an episode with Shakim where I went over the initial interviews with Willie Mincy, Gwen Mincy, his sister, and Barbara Long, and then what have Jeremiah and Marie said, but he's never heard of the Mincies. He never even heard that they were even a thing. He never heard the interviews, which I find really suspect that, the day of the murder, police are told by Mary Jean Gonzalez, our initial character, to go talk to the boyfriend, Willie Mincy. Police arrive at Willie Mincy's house. He flees. He's picked up then, and then we're going to get into that interview, but especially the way they were killed. Well, I mean, Marsha and Floyd's throats were slit. Floyd was ran over by a car. He was dragged. Marsha was stabbed 15 to 20 times with a small knife. And the way that they described the knife would be, it'd be a pocket knife, which is very funny because Willie Mincy shows Detective Taliano a pocket knife during his interview, but whatever. But let's go over Marsha's timeline because Floyd we don't know much too about except the person, the neighbor where Floyd's body was found, that neighbor, that White House that you kind of saw in the video, that you saw in the video, they heard arguing. There was a witness that heard arguing, heard a commotion, but by the time he looked outside, there really wasn't anything going on. And that was really out of Floyd's area. So I feel like he was running from something or he really didn't even go over there. So we don't really know much about him except that a neighbor heard arguing and yelling and then, saw the police cars about, 30 minutes to an hour later. Marsha, however, it's very well known where she was. Okay. Multiple people saw her throughout the night. First person to see her is Barbara Long. Now, who is Barbara Long? Barbara Long is a close family friend. I'm not going to put pictures up because all this is, alleged based on my investigation. But Barbara Long was a close family friend, was the godmother to Marsha. She dropped Marsha Blakely off at Epps' apartment on 8/7/91 between 11 p.m. and 11:30. She was interviewed 8:15. She came in herself after Marsha's nephew, I believe it's Nick Blakely, Tim's son Nick or something. Nick asked her to go in because he didn't really believe the police's story about the Ford. So Marsha Blakely confided in Barbara Long. Barbara Long was supposed to pick her up the next morning to take her to go see her kids again. When she showed up, her and her daughter showed up. The door was unlocked. The house was open. She walked in. Her daughter and her noticed that Marsha's purse was there. And Barbara Long says in her interview, little Marsha shouldn't have gone far then because she doesn't go anywhere without her purse. And they noticed that her missing shoe, because her left shoe was at the crime scene, the right shoe was in the apartment, which is why I think she was killed somewhere else and moved. Plus the witnesses of the man. But anyways, so Barbara Long, 11 to 11:30, saw her, okay? Dropped her between 11 and 11:30. Sister's father's, it was her father's death anniversary, so she spent it with her kids during that day. Then, she was around the projects, but by 11 o'clock, Barbara saw her, and she said that was normal for Marsha because usually Willie Mincy, the boyfriend, got off of work at midnight, and Marsha would always go home before he got off work. Not to his house, but to hers for some reason. So then Mary Jane Gonzalez says that she saw her at her shop where she worked, the Shop and Go. She was a friend of hers, contacted police the morning of the murder, saw Marsha beat up, scared, trying to boost stakes, in need of money that night, and that was a little later. Told police they should speak to Willie Mincy, her boyfriend, described the vehicle and the man who was with her on 8/8/91. Now, before 8/8/87, the little earlier in the night, she did see Marsha between 11:30, 11:45 at her work, okay? And she said Marsha was fine, didn't look like anything happened. Well, then Marsha met up with Jeremiah Charlton, who she was trying to cop crack from. He was a local guy, he was a local dealer. Saw Marsha, he says he saw Marsha between 11:30 and 11:45 on 8/7. Marsha was looking for drugs. So he set her up with a goodo, which is, a trick in exchange for the drug. So I'm going to send you off, you go do this and we'll get you the drugs to whatever. So he sent her off with a white boy named Jeff, which he comes up later, and another person. She was not beat up at the time. He said he trusted who he sent her off with. And he came forward after he had a drug charge about a week later after the murders. He thought maybe if I exchange information, then this is going to happen. But okay, so we got Barbara, 11 to 11:30, Mary Jane, 11:30 to 11:45, Jeremiah, 11:45 to midnight, saw her probably, okay? Well, then Gwen Mincy, which is, she's not on here, but Willie Mincy's sister, she's 32 years old, saw Willie and Marsha arguing on the corner of Pole Avenue, which is right there, right on the corner where they lived, with Marsha about 12:30. She says that. So she's then with her. Well, then Mary Jane Gonzalez says that Marsha Blakely showed up at her house that night. She was a little beat up. She was scared. She was trying to sell her stakes, that she really needed the money, that she was in some trouble. And then she goes, when she asked her, what happened to you? She said, how it is when you're, you know what I mean? You owe people money, blah, 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 blah. Well, between 11:30 and 12:30, when Mary Jane saw her show up at her apartment, she was beat up. Okay. So she goes from not being beat up to beat up. Now, Barbara Long did say that Willie Mincy, her boyfriend, her baby dad, had beat her up 2 weeks prior, and her eye was still healing from that. But Mary Jane Gonzalez very clearly said she had new contusions. It wasn't just she had bruised. She had she looked rough. But an hour and a half previous to that, when Barbara dropped her off, she wasn't looking rough. The only person that she's ran into, documented, verified, is at this point Willie Mincy. So they've been together 7 years. He was interviewed 8/8/89, 8/15. Like I said, Shakim had never heard of it. I don't know if Ian Benson Davis has. I have just written him recently. Lenny never heard of the interviews when I talked to him. And Al's been, I haven't really spoken to him too much. I sent him the interview to say, he needs to relook into them, whatever. But the last person that in his interview stated was with her at 2 a.m. was the baby dad boyfriend. Now let's think about the way that Marsha was killed. Okay. Her throat was slit. She was stabbed 15 to 20 times with a small object. And then her throat being cut and her carotid being severed is what really killed her. And then she was beat up. Well, you don't do that for a drug dealers are not going to beat you up that way or slit your throat or kill you in such a violent way if you rob them, which is, this new detective's theory based on God knows what, but that's just not a thing. You know what I mean? And these weren't dealing with the local, and not derogatory, just what she did at the time. She smoked crack, the local crackhead, they're not dealing with that. They were dealing with people that were moving, more weight than that. But this is where the investigation started. And just based on the timeline, common sense would say we need to look at the boyfriend. Well, and after Mary Jane Gonzalez told the detectives, hey, you need to go talk to Willie Mincy, that's exactly what they did. But Willie decided to run when the detectives showed up. And then when he went into the interview, he acted like he didn't even know Marsha was dead. That was the biggest, issue. And what I did is I went through the interview and like I said, I made some points. We're going to play a couple little things, not much, but just a couple. Like I said, I just want to do a synopsis on where we're at. So 8/8, they go to Willie Mincy's house. There's a confrontation happening in the doorway. Hold on, we're going to go this stairs. So let's start here, okay? This is the timeline based on Taliano's police report. What I did is I made an Excel, so it's so much easier to read. So Officer Rewalk dispatched Wallace Lane, 1:25 in the morning, found Floyd Epps, okay? Thought it was a pedestrian accident. 9:18 in the morning, Marsha Blakely's body was discovered on where I showed you. And in the shopping plaza, the Rollinson brothers were the owners of Charlie's Bar. They found Marsha's body 50 feet from the back door of Charlie's Bar. A man named Blackburn, who was also half brothers with Floyd Epps, identified Marsha immediately. He was half brother of Floyd Epps, who was letting Marsha stay with them. So then between 9:30 and 2 p.m., Taliano was contacted by Captain Sal Rivera, told to go interview Mary Jane Gonzalez at the Stop and Go clerk. Mary Jane claimed that she saw Marsha at the Stop and Go around 11:30, later showed up at a residence, needed money, requested $10, tried selling her steaks. She told her, she had a busted eye and a lip and seemed very concerned about her safety when she showed up at her house between 12 and 12:30. Marsha gets into the car that looked like it was an Oldsmobile, maroon and brown in color. It had rust. Remember this. The car's exhaust system was very loud. A black male was driving, wearing a baseball cap, and had short hair. Based on the description, MGM must have clearly seen who Marsha left with. And then she said to the detectives, go talk to the boyfriend, Willie Mincy. And that's what they did. So the detectives went to Willie Mincy's mother's house located at West 23rd, where we saw in the video. Upon approaching the residence, Taliano noticed an ongoing disturbance. A crew of people inside were trying to restrain Willie Mincy. Taliano tried to assist. Willie Mincy fled out the back door. Shortly after, Willie Mincy was picked up on 24th Street, where then they took him to the station to talk to him. So then Taliano goes to the crime scene, catches up with Captain Sal Rivera, informs him of what's going on. Sal Rivera introduces Taliano to Mark Blakely, which is Marsha's twin brother. Mark Blakely had no pertinent information. Last time he saw his sister was 8/7 in the afternoon. Their older sister, Lisa Blakely, had custody of Marsha's children. Marsha spent a lot of time with Floyd Epps. They were just friends, and he did not want to further discuss Marsha's lifestyle choices. So then we get to the interview, and this is what Taliano just says on his police report. We're going to go back to what actually pertinent information there is. So Willie Mincy's interview came into contact with Marsha Blakely at 2 a.m. at his mother's residence, okay? Claims they were talking because Marsha had been upset with Mincy. They wanted to discuss. Mincy said no injuries were present. Well, that's funny because if you saw her at 2 a.m., didn't Mary Jane Gonzalez say at 12:30 p.m. she was beat up? So there, note that. Mincy said no injuries were present. Claims he didn't see any sign that she had been assaulted. Marsha was heading to Epps, followed shortly after, had to grab his shoes and his hat. Well, Mary Jane Gonzalez said the guy that was with Marsha was wearing a hat, right? Clock that. Then headed west towards Blakely's home. Claimed Marsha was out of sight. Willie Mincy saw white station wagon, which we later learned isn't true. Said Marsha was in it, yet he continued to Epps' apartment. Later found out we lied. Later returned to the mother's home, then returned to Epps' apartment where he found Leonard Walker. Stayed there till 7, 8 a.m., romantically involved with Marsha Blakely for several years. 2 children. Herbert Wallace appeared at the Epps' home, and Willie Mincy stayed there for the entire time. Taliano tells Willie Mincy about Mary Jane Gonzalez, liable to offer any factual information. Well, and it's interesting I told her this because that same day, the next day, Mary Jane Gonzalez will contact Taliano and say, hey, that car that I saw Marsha in the night that she was murdered drove by my house and keeps driving around in a circle. But it's crazy. The muffler's fixed now. Because she told him the muffler's really, well, now all of a sudden it's fixed, but now they're driving around her apartment building and she's scared. Well, I wonder if that was Willie Mincy since Taliano told. Clock that. So Willie Mincy's stories, his Puerto Rican, New York drug traffickers, Detroit drug connection, she may have owed money, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to go to the actual interview that matters, okay? So when he got there, he didn't know Marsha was dead. But based on Herbert Wallace's interview that was taken that morning, he knew before they arrived that she was dead. He knew at 10 a.m. that morning she was dead because he was at Herbert Wallace's house. Sorry. He was at Herbert Wallace's house, and Herbert Wallace said, Gwen came into my house and said Marsha's dead with Vanessa Mincy, which is Willie Mincy's ex-wife, and said she was found dead. And so he knew. So when at 2:00 in the afternoon, how are you acting like you don't know? And then he continued, which I found really weird, is he continued to ask, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? And I'm going to let you hear that, okay? Hold on.
Talking to you, okay?
Marcy,
You have to understand what I'm saying. Can you hear me? I want you are not a suspect, but I'm going to advise you of your rights just so that I can say that I did it, all right? Fair enough? Okay, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any question if you wish. You can decide at any time to exercise these rights or not answering any questions or make any statements until then. Do you understand your rights? Do you want to talk to me?
Marcia, what's wrong, Marcia?
Okay, do you want to talk to me, Willie?
What's wrong with Marcia?
Marcia's dead.
Marcia? What's wrong with Marcia?
She's dead. Yes, I'm sorry, but she is dead.
This is no.
Just have a seat. We'll talk about it.
Marcia,
Or you can stand. It's up to you.
Marcia ain't dead.
Did you see her last night, Willie?
She come by my mother's house.
Your mother's house on 23rd Street? About what time?
No, I think it was more like the 2.
When, in the afternoon?
What happened to her? What happened to her? I mean, no offense. You already know she's killed. Why do you keep asking what happened to her? Is it because he knew that she was tortured? Is it because he knew that her throat was slit? It's because he knew her body was mutilated? No one just asked, oh, my loved one is killed. What happened? What happened to her? Well, she was killed. What happened? Why are you? And he's going to do this again at the 9-minute mark. It's crazy. And then he admits to Taliano, this is another thing, is that he took Marsha's purse. Marsha told him not to come, and that Marsha had told him, don't come down to Floyd Epps on his shit. They were clearly fighting, and she clearly said, "Don't come down there. I don't want to fight with you anymore." Claims the white station wagon, which he claims that the white station wagon, Marsha got into, which he then the next day recants, that Marsha got away. Okay. But then he says the next day that never even happened. Willie Mincy asks about Floyd. That was huge when he asked about Floyd. He said, "Well, what happened? What happened to Floyd?" And I don't know how Taliano didn't clock that. Like, what do you mean? He's the only person, by the way, in this whole thing that even asked what happened to Floyd. Is that because he knows something did? So then he says, I got on my bike. I came down to the apartment, 2 a.m. I didn't see, Marsha walking off, which you would. I mean, you go back, get your shoes on, you get your bike on, you're driving, and you guys saw the drive, how long that walk would be for her. He'd be able to catch up to her pretty quickly. And that's going to be tomorrow. Why that's important? Because someone did see him going after her, we'll just say. So then he said he left for a time with his sister, came back to the apartment about 3:30, 4 a.m. Herbert Wallace saw white van. Herbert Wallace saw white van, saw Gwen and Mincy interview. It was weird, but didn't catch up. Did not go back to Epps' house. Now it's Wallace. So then Willie Mincy lies about Marsha being beat up when Mary Jane Gonzalez sees her, like we said. Seems to be afraid. Seemed afraid. And Barbara Long's interview, she said when, she dropped off at 11:30, she wasn't afraid about anything. She was fine. And then, I found really funny is that the 21:33 minute mark, Mincy kind of has like a little breakdown I want you guys to listen to. And he kind of freaks out and he states, "I should have called her. I should have called her. I should have left that bike in that house. And I should have just ran and called. I should have just ran and called." Why? Because if maybe you didn't run after her and you didn't chase her, Marsha would be alive today? Is that why, Willie? And this is alleged. This is just me, wondering why somebody would say something that kind of weird. You know what I mean? Let's hear it.
I should have called her. I should have called her. I should have left that bike in the house, and I should have just ran and
No, you
called her.
can't do that to yourself.
I should have ran and called her.
What about those pills you had on you? Where are those from?
That was from my friend. He was talking about committing suicide.
You know what kind of pills they are?
No.
No, Taliano just ignores this. He's like, "Well, don't do that to yourself." Well, I'd be like, "Well, why do you say, why wouldn't he as a detective be like, well, why do you say that, Willie? What would change if you did leave the bike in the house?" So then what was also sus is Mincy gets extremely upset. Now, he gets extremely upset when he finds out that Mark Blakely, her twin, has been speaking with Taliano about Marsha. But when Taliano informs him about the sister Lisa knowing, he didn't care. He didn't get upset. But when he finds out that Mark knows that Marsha's dead and that Taliano's been speaking to him, he starts smacking the table and starts getting all upset. And my thinking is there's a fear there that he's scared of Mark Blakely for some reason. That was just, my thinking. And then he says, when Taliano say there's a confrontation going on in his home, because Taliano asks him, he's like, when I pulled up today, he said, when I pulled up today, there was a whole, thing going on at your house. What was going on there? You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find. He said, why are you all upset? At 24:22, I should have known it was that one. So I want you to hear this. At 24:22, he says, I walked up to your mother's house today and you guys were all fighting in the front yard and so upset. Why were you so upset? And Mincy says he had a feeling something was wrong. He had a feeling. So apparently he is like ESP and just gets a feeling and just, loses his shit.
You know what kind of pills those are?
Shit all these houses. I didn't look at them. He just told me to throw them away. I just put them in my back pocket and forgot about them when I come into the house and come back there to see her.
When I came up to your house today, your mother's house, right? What was going on? Remember, I tried to walk in the door, everybody screaming and yelling, and
I could feel something. I could feel something was wrong. I could feel something was wrong. I could feel it. Something was wrong.
I mean, you know, I was there to bother you, to hurt you. I was there just to talk to you. That's all. You know? You think you can help me? You knew who she hung around with. You knew who she dealt with. You knew who she was afraid of. You knew who she needed to be afraid of.
Glenn, I'm just talking about.
Yeah, Glenn's one of his theories, you know. And then, you know, I thought he just had a feeling something was wrong when the police showed up. He just, you know, knew something was wrong, and his first initial reaction is not to go to the police and be like, "Oh, why are you guys here? What didn't you tell me?" No, he just ran. And Taliano himself admits throughout this whole interview, throughout this entire thing, and this is just one interview of 3 that Willie had, and this is the only one we're going to go over tonight. Then tomorrow we're going to go over his second interview and then his interview with his sister that incriminates him even more than this interview. This is where we're starting. We're going to start where the detectives started and just backtrack what they did and then see how they went from A to Z, because it doesn't make sense how they went from this to the 4. It's kind of insane. But, you know, towards the end of this interview, Taliano even states that, you know, you were the closest person to her. You know, it's really, you know, your last one to see her alive. And what they know so far is that she was acting desperate and scared, needing money, trying to boost stakes. And at the end of the interview, Willie Mincy tried to change his time with Marsha. Like after he said, you know, Taliano said something about 12. You know, people saw around 12, then, you know, he saw her at 12:30. And Taliano told him about a witness at 12. Is more on 6 occasions. Willie Mincy stayed at 2 a.m. throughout the entire interview. 10, 15 times. I mean, 10, 15 times is ridiculous. So why all of a sudden did he change it? And then, you know, Taliano puts in his police report that he talked to the stepdad, who later talks to the trial, but talks to the stepdad, and it was after 2 a.m. that he saw Marsha with Willie Mincy. So again, we have another person saying it was Willie. And this is the last couple I'm going to play you guys from this interview. And it's Taliano saying, like, we need somebody for this. And right now, you're the only person that's with her. And he'll say that throughout multiple interviews with Willie. So he knows.
Detroit?
Yeah.
And then she owed money for it?
Yeah.
She say who these people were? That's what we need to run these people down. See, the more time it goes by, the harder it is to find these people. Right now, I got no witnesses. You're the last one to see her.
Now, who is he talking about with Willie? We got to find these people. These people. Like, how does Taliano already know it's multiple people? How does Taliano not know that he's sitting in front of not know that he might be sitting in front of the potential killer right now? Because he's even thinking you're the last one to see her alive.
That I know of so far. Prior to that, it was like I said, midnight to 12:30. She was already, somebody had smacked her around. She had a black eye, and she said she was desperate. She was acting desperate. She had to get some money. She was trying to get $10 off this girl, trying to get $5 off this girl.
Who was she trying to get?
This girl, she went to her apartment, said, you know, I just need to borrow some money. So she felt friendly with her. I need to borrow some money.
Tell someone, and
She
later
said,
that day,
I just don't have any. She said, look, I got steaks, you know. She said, I'll sell you some steaks. She said, I don't have any money, you know. So then she walks out. She gets into this dark brown car I'm telling you about, and they leave. They go towards Reeves Avenue. But that was like 12.
And that's when he's like kind of trying to change his time there, you know. But throughout this interview, Willie Mincy tries to give Taliano multiple reasons why, you know, he's asking, like, why would somebody want to, you know, hurt Marsha? And these during this interview were the reasons. He didn't know because he didn't know any problems Marsha had. The neighbors of Marsha were selling, Bam Bam from New York, and they're Puerto Ricans. The third one was neighbors getting Bam Bam from relatives that are from New York. Both stories, neighbors were annoyed because Epps had people in and out. Taliano apologizes to Mincy between these two stories, which is really weird. Like, he goes like, sorry. He even says it. You can hear it. Goes, sorry. Why is he telling this guy sorry about? Because he's directing him. We see how he's like already been like, oh yeah, I got these guys off the street. Like, why? Like, weird. Then he also says in this interview, a guy, Glenn, that was evicted, owed money to, but he was evicted, so he doesn't see, whatever. And then Marsha told him people from Detroit came down here. Gwen, verifies the story a week later too, tries to at least. And Marsha smoked up all their stuff. And even Taliano tries to say in an interview with Delphina Geis, which we haven't introduced yet, that Marsha smoked $2,000 worth of crack cocaine. Yeah. No. Well, then, what we're going to talk about tomorrow, we're going to talk about 2 interviews tomorrow. We're just going to get right into those 2 and just do a summary of what we found. The first few minutes, Mincy reaches back out to Taliano, says, he wants to speak with him again, and even statistically, crimes like this don't occur in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Usually it's when you're killed violently the way that she is, it's not over a drug. I don't know how you got from this to drug debt. But even the fact that this interview wasn't even brought up. I mean, when we talked to Shakim even said, I've never heard of these interviews with the Mincies. I don't even heard about the Mincies. But the Mincies were the center of Taliano and Rosales' investigation in the beginning. And it makes sense because the last people that were with her, an hour before her time of death, is the boy from Baby Daddy. And was the boy from Baby Daddy, maybe he saw her coming out of somebody's house that she just, pulled a trick on, and she smoked up the crack that she already had gotten, and he was mad that she didn't get any for him. And maybe because he was an addict at the time too, and maybe then she went to try to go boost stakes, and, but this is all assumptions. It's all me just allegedly. Maybe this is a theory. I have a couple theories. But I'm excited to be back. I'm going to end this with, what did happen in Lorain County is that our new prosecutor, Tony Sillo, came in and basically withdrew the state from the petition, the motion for a new trial, basically ending their chances of, a new trial as of right now, which we knew he would do because his best friend is the one that formerly prosecuted this case. And this is our new county prosecutor. And now he's not new. He worked in the criminal division for 30 years, and then he quit for a little bit when J.D. Thomas was then, and then ran against J.D. Thomas and worked for the sheriff's office, drug task force, and human trafficking thing while he ran for office after he left the AG's office to come back here to run for office. So he has some ties, and he's now the current Lorain County prosecutor, but he withdrew, the county on the motion, so that basically quashed the whole case. But his best friend, John Rosenbaum, who was the former assistant county prosecutor for years, decades, here in Lorain County, like I said, good old boys club. Because then you got Dennis Will too, that helped with the election interference stuff that Josh Dubin was talking about with this case with the former prosecutor. And J.D. Thompson is no innocent in any of it, believe me. But the new prosecutor, Tony Sillo, is not going to go after a case that his best friend prosecuted and looks highly corrupt on. I mean, why do you think he's fighting Nancy Smith's case so hard right now? Well, he did. And, I said back in December, he's going to take it to the 9th District, and they're going to get shot down. And, Judge Janet Burnside's decision against Tony's going to stay. But he would do the same thing with this case. And it's a pattern of covering for his friends. And, I mean, that's really what he did. And he won't even, he did take a meeting with, the attorneys and listen. But like they said, he could care less, why would he care about justice? And the problem with, county prosecutors that we're having all over the state is these county prosecutors think it's like their job to keep people in prison that are innocent just because of the claims that they could have against the county for wrongfully putting them there, instead of justice, which is, really the job of a prosecutor. But I'm excited to get back into this case. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to go over the 8-9, 8-15 interviews real quick. Then the next day, we're going to go over which is Barbara Long's interview, Herbert Wallace's interview, and then Delfina's. And then we're going to get back into playing the rest of the interviews because we still have people to hear from in this case. And like I said, the 35-year anniversary is coming up in the next week and a half. So I think it is a perfect time to get back to the Ohio Forum and get loud. And we're going to have a lot of stuff in the next month coming up, and I'm really excited about it. But we all need to bring attention to our county prosecutor to, remind him that his job is not only to, prosecute people, but to make sure that justice is done, and especially in wrongfully convicted cases in Lorain County, because I don't think this is the only one that this kind of situation has played out in. And then tomorrow is going to just be damning. The little recordings that I have, and we're going to go over the timeline that I made, and it's just going to be exciting to do a little overview and then get back into this case. And then I have a book I'm working on. I'm hopefully it'll be done by the end of the month. I'm hoping I'm about halfway done. But you guys have a good night. For those late night people that stay with me, thank you. And, stay focused, Lorain County, and look up the Ohio 4. Go back and, watch former episodes. I'm so excited to be back with you guys. I will see you all soon. All right. Peace and love.
Thank you for joining me today on Mean Street. I hope you enjoyed the show. I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider supporting our work and supporting my effort. You can support directly underneath at the Spotify donations, or you can directly give a donation at paypal.me/Mean Street, Ohio. Any donation received will help me continue to provide news to you and everyone else across Ohio and beyond. I love what I do, and I just hope to continue to do it. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining me today on Mean Street. I hope